Hi everyone, my name is Laura and today we are going to be doing our teen and art craft instruction video. And in this video we will be doing our very own paint by number Starry Night craft. And I hope you enjoy making this with me, so stick around. Okay, so now we are going to get started with our Starry Night take-home craft kit. So this is the teen kit, but the adult kit will have the exact same things in it. So I am just going to flip this over. You'll see on the back, I've attached a book list of books about art and painting, but also books about Van Gogh, because Van Gogh is the artist who created Starry Night. So, and since Starry Night is what we're doing, I thought that was a good choice for this month. So I'm just gonna open this up. Set that book list off to the side for later. And kind of pour out everything that's in there. So you will have two pieces of paper in here. This one, which is a copy of all of the paint by numbers. So this is the exact same thing that you will have in your copy over here, but this one's a little smaller. But this way, if you paint over something and you think you have the wrong number, you can just look at this and say, oh, that was a number 2, not a number 3, and then you can paint over it. So this you can use for reference. You can also use this for reference. So this is a painting, or this is a copy of what it should look like when you're all finished. So you may be able to look on here and see that, you know, if there's something that doesn't have a number on it or you aren't sure about, you can kind of, you know, match them up and see like, oh yeah, this is the same thing as this. So those are the two papers. You will have 7 little cups of paint. They are numbered 1 through 7, and those are the numbers that are going to correspond to the numbers that are on your paint by numbers. So this one right here is black. That's number 7. The rest of them will correlate to those numbers. The last thing, or the two last things you're going to have a little brush. Just one little brush in here. This one should be good for everything that you need it for. Since everything on there is very small, you shouldn't have a problem just using this smaller brush. If you look at your brush and there's like any little extra hairs or whatever, you can actually just trim those off. Basically, we want to be able to make a fine point, which it'll do better when it's wet. The last thing in there is your paint by numbers. So for this, before you start painting, you will probably want to put this out, lay this out underneath like books or something like that for a couple of days so that it is good and flat, because otherwise it will sort of roll up on you. The other option is you can always tape down the corners. Just be really careful that you don't tear up your paper. So I would use like, I don't know, masking tape or painter's tape or something like that, which is like the blue paint or blue tape. So I already have one that has been sitting out for a little while, so it's pretty flat, and I actually already started on it, so you can kind of see I've got a couple little spots that are already filled in. I also have a cup that's got some water in it. It doesn't have very much water, but you don't need very much for this. So you'll probably want that cup. And then I also have some paper towels. You don't want your brush super wet, otherwise your paint will get really diluted. So, and then when you go to paint, it just won't be very thick. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wet my brush. So now it's kind of wet. Oops. I got water on my thing. So now it's kind of wet, you can see that. So I'm gonna just put it on here, get it kind of dry. That way it won't be quite so wet. And since I started with number 1, I am going to paint a little bit more of number 1. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and do number 2. So number 2, actually. I'm gonna do number 3. So number 3 is this sort of like, you know, dark grayish blue color. You don't need a lot of paint for this, so I would just recommend getting a little bit of paint on your brush just like that, and not use a ton. If you are going to leave for any length of time, like you're going, you know, to the bathroom or whatever, go ahead and cover that up. Make sure you put the lid on there because this will dry out pretty quickly. And but if it does dry out too much, assuming that it's not completely dry, you can always add a couple of drops of water to it to make it a little more liquid. So I'm gonna start, there's really no wrong way to do this. You can start from the corner if you want. You can start in the middle and kind of work your way out. But I'm just gonna choose a color. So since I already chose blue, I'm gonna choose, or this blue color, I'm gonna go with number 3. So I'm gonna go and just start painting this number 3. You'll notice it sort of goes around this corner. So you go around the corner too. You want to make sure you kind of cover up the lines because you don't want to see those when you are all finished with your painting. So you'll want to cover up all those lines and definitely make sure you cover up the number. And that's why that reference sheet is a good thing to have, because you definitely want to cover up the number and make sure, but if you use the wrong thing, it'll make things easier. The nice thing about this one is that it is relatively small, and so little pieces of it, so if you just have like a little bit like one of these, it's really not going to make that much of a difference. So this one is actually pretty forgiving on that front. I'm going to color a couple more little 3s. I will say that when I do this, my hands usually start to hurt after a while. So make sure you take breaks. This is also a very thin little brush. So if you decide that is actually too thin for you, you can always wrap it up in tape or, you know, something like that so that it's not quite so thin. And it'll make it a little easier to grip, and then it won't be quite so hard to use. Let's see. All right, I'm just gonna color a few more 3s over here, all in a row. All right, so I'm done with well, I'm not done, but I added in some number 3s. I usually just paint basically every single item that I can see in that color and sort of work my way down or work my way out. The nice thing about having this pretty flat is that you can always flip it around and work this way. You just have to read your numbers upside down. So I'm gonna rinse this off in my water and then dry it a little bit on my towel again. And I'm gonna choose number 4 this time. This paint tends to dry out the fastest on the lid, so a lot of times I'll start with the lid just to make sure I use all the paint. You'll notice there's not very much paint because really you won't need that much. So don't stress about not having enough paint. Do this big section. So if this seems kind of hard at first, that's okay. You know, everything's hard when you first start trying it. Just kind of figure out what works for you. Like I said, there's really no wrong way to do this. Okay, so Vincent van Gogh was a Dutch painter. He was an Impressionist painter, a post-Impressionist painter. So he actually really didn't become famous until after he had already passed away. So most of his paintings, obviously he painted while he was still alive, but nobody really knew him or didn't really buy his paintings until after he died. He was very influential in art history. In his time working, he made over 2,100 paintings, which is just a huge number of paintings. He did a lot of landscapes, a lot of still lifes, portraits, and self-portraits. His colors are always really bold and dramatic, and he has what they call an impulsive and expressive brushwork that kind of shows, again here with the swirls and things like that on Starry Night, and a lot of his other paintings kind of illustrate that. Unfortunately, he was plagued with mental health issues. He struggled from severe depression, and unfortunately did commit suicide at the age of 37. One of the things you probably know about him is that he did cut off his own ear because of his depression and mental instability. So he did have a lot of mental issues. So a couple of the paintings that are his most favorite, obviously, is Starry Night. So Starry Night was a huge painting for him, of course, after his death, and that one is very well known. He also did some paintings of sunflowers that are also very popular, and are very pretty. So if you are interested, you should, or you can see one of those on your screen right now. He also did a lot of portraits, so he painted people like his mother, friends of his, other painters, and he also did a lot of self-portraits. So he would do paintings of himself. You know, the nice thing is when you don't have anybody to paint, you can always just look in the mirror and there you are. So you can paint yourself. So those were some of his more famous paintings. He did a lot of flowers and different landscapes. He also painted a lot of trees, basically just sort of the outdoors and landscapes. He did a lot of landscapes using sort of his signature style. So I'm gonna switch to my next color. And we have number 5. So this paint is acrylic paint. So this is like the craft paint that you would find at the store. So if you decide you need some extra paint, that is what this is. It is acrylic paint. if you're painting for a while and you notice your paintbrush start to get a little goopy and harder to paint with, just rinse it off, start over, put paint on it again, and you should be good to go. Okay, one more 5 over here. Okay, so that's my number 5. Rinse off my brush. The section we're in probably won't really have any 7s. That's this big one over here is your 7. And that will have probably the most, and then a little bit right here. So we just won't do any with 7 right now. That's okay. So we're just gonna do 1 through 6, or a little bit of 1 through 6 to kind of get an idea of what we're doing. So this is like a dark blue. So Van Gogh is also known for doing a lot of self-portraits and portraits of other people. He painted a lot of paintings of other people and himself. So I guess when you're not sure who to paint and you have a mirror, you have someone to paint always. You don't have to make anything up. But that is one of something that he used to paint a lot of. This blue almost looks black, but not quite. Okay, that'll be enough for 6. So now you can kind of see how those colors kind of come together in order to make our Starry Night. The last color I'm going to show you is the yellow color. So this one is the lightest color that's on there. It also is the one that is the most translucent. So translucent means that you can kind of see through it. So even though our lines are not super dark on here, you can kind of still see through them. So here's what I would recommend. If you have any white paint at home, pull that out and paint some of your 2s. But if you do that, you will need to make sure you have your handy dandy thing on here so you can see, oh yeah, that's a 2 and this is a 2, so that you know which number they are. But you can also see you painted over something, so if you did that, then you can probably tell. The other option is just painting it several times. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on, kind of lay it on a little thick right there on that number 2. And let's see, look for a couple more. Let that dry. Choose. You will notice that, like, if you're looking for something, you absolutely cannot find it. This big area over here is a number 2, so I'll go ahead and paint that. So yeah, this is what it'll sort of look like. There's this number 2 down here. You can still see that too. You'll still be able to see the lines. So you might just have to go over that one a few times so that you know that you actually have it. So we're just gonna let these dry a little. Wait till they completely dry, because if you try and go back over them, it'll just take the paint off that's still wet. So you can kind of see that it's gone a little bit now. Those 2s, you can't see them quite as well. So I recommend going on here, painting as many of those 2s as you can, wander off, go do something else, come back 10-15 minutes later, paint more 2s, and then after you do a couple of layers and you're confident you won't be able to see that 2 anymore, come back and fill in that whole spot. So since this one's dried a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and just paint in this one. I'm using a little bit more paint than I would of other colors, just because it does need to be a little bit thicker to cover up. But you may still need to go back through and do a couple of coats. Not as worried about the outside lines because we can always cover those up with one of our other colors, the color of the box that's next to it. So I'm less worried about that. So basically now we're just going to keep going until we have painted in every color that is on our painting. All right, so this is what it will mostly look like when it is a completely finished painting. So you'll just keep filling in all of those extra spots. I did leave the edges on mine on there so that if you want, you can hang it up that way. The other option is to, you can always cut those off. These are 11 by 17, or on paper that's 11 by 17, but they are going to be a little bit smaller due to those edges. So 11 by 17 frame won't work perfectly for this. But you know, the white around the edges isn't going to hurt anything. So as you can see, I did have a few little extra spots that I forgot to paint. Like this is a number 1. If you look real closely, you can see some of those like numbers that are on here that I may have missed or just aren't painted over as thickly enough, but in those cases I'm not going to worry about it too much since I've had this hung up on my wall, and since it's been hung up, when you're kind of far away from it, you can't really see like any of the little imperfections. So don't stress about those too much. This really is sort of like a learning thing, and just getting better at practicing with painting. So yeah, so now you have your finished painting, and thank you so much for participating in this program with me. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will move on to the next project. So this the beginning of November for adults and teens is this Starry Night project. The second half of the month is going to be hand warmers, so we are going to have to sew again. So that way if your hands are cold, you can warm them up with your hand warmers. Of course, we do absolutely want to see any of your works of art. So if you have finished yours, please feel free to email us at emaillibrary@avondaleaz.gov, and I will put that up on the screen so that you can see it. We love to see your guys' work and what you've made, so please feel free to do that for us. Okay, thanks, bye-bye.